Hello, hi, welcome to the show. This is Careers TV. My name is Nkokheli Lindazwe, but a lot of people know me as Nkoks. I'm here with the two gentlemen that I respect and admire. And I told myself, I said, today is the day where I get these two gentlemen to talk about the socioeconomic political issues that we are faced with as a country and just bring down the conversation to a level where you and I can understand, because I think these guys are a bit more technical. That's why I'm here. So joining me is Arabile Gumede. How are you, brother?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me, right?
Absolute pleasure hosting you. And Mpho Madzibadela, our publisher at Careers Mag. How are you?
All right, how are you, my brother?
Easy.
Good to be in your chair.
Yeah, it is. It's a good
I didn't know it was this hot, but it's okay.
Cheers. I want to start it off on a lighter note. Usually, I know with interviews, I'll start with you, Arabile. With interviews, at the end of the interview, people would generally say, what's coming up for Arabile Gumede?
Yeah,
I want us to start the show with that.
Sure. Okay.
What's in the pipeline? What's in the works? What are you up to? What can we expect in the next couple of weeks, months from Arabile Gumede, the brand?
Look, the brand is pretty steady in many aspects, right? My big thing has always been financial education, financial understanding, economic financial understanding more than anything else. It's all good and well, I show you how to make up a budget, but if you don't make it up in the context of South Africa's economy, you've also kind of made a mishap with regards to your budget too. So I need to show you and tell you that this is how nonsensical the situation is in the country right now, you know? And in that context, how do you then build yourself? So that's going to continue. One of the other things that I've really worked hard on, I've been doing financial journalism now for 10 years. So I've been fortunate enough to really have excelled in something that I didn't plan on. And so I decided to actually create a documentary related to this and actually detail my life in many aspects. Get to have a conversation with my mother about what it was like raising me. It's a single parent as well who's decided, you know what, I need to raise this boy the best she could. And here she is now, having raised somebody who wasn't an accountant, yet decided initially to be an accountant, and now is a financial journalist across some of the biggest media broadcasters in the country. So it's a big deal, but making Arab money is coming out soon.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. I'm looking forward to it. I think that's going to be something that is much needed, because I think looking at the times where we're at, we do need that kind of storytelling, to know where it all began and how you actually got to where you are right now.
Look, and one thing I will always say is that my story is not more significant than yours, Mpho.
Yeah, of course.
Right? It's not more significant than yours, Mpho. The only difference is that it's my story.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to tell people.
And you own it.
Precisely. So I own my story, and I have a story. It's not going to be a huge story that has, a World Cup moment. Siya Kolisi, for example. It doesn't have anything that major, but it's my story. It's my hardships.
And more than anything, I think it also encourages the culture of documenting our heritage and our culture and ourselves.
Precisely.
And I think it's something that we generally don't do as South Africans, that we need to do more of.
Yeah.
We've had so many moments as a country, of which now, if you look back, there's very limited footage, there's limited documented stuff on paper and stuff like that.
One of my favorite things to say, my favorite quotes actually, is actually a sad quote in a way. It says, never before has a generation so diligently documented itself doing nothing. Just think about it. We're on Instagram showing ourselves getting into a car.
Yeah.
Of what substance is that?
Yeah.
What message are you
You haven't actually shared anything.
Yeah.
Right? So we do it so diligently.
I'm not attracted to that kind of energy. I'm so sorry to say. I feel, I like the energy. I'm sorry,
no, carry on. I think that's part of this is a conversation.
I'm attracted to ambitious people and content. I'll just give you an example. I would not post, for me, whether I have or I don't have. I would not post my car or a house, solely because my thinking is, I know there's so many of us that wants to get there. Maybe it must come in a motivational environment. Maybe I need to drive with someone. Maybe I need to stay with someone that is homeless, so that they can build from there, other than having to to post a picture there and just say lifestyle. You understand? Because the other thing that Arabile, just to come to where you are, to say, I like the initiative of the Arab money. I think it's something that we need. But what we need as black businesses and young people at our level is to find synergies, because without synergies, if Arab money comes in with financial education, economic support and everything else, but then we are also distancing ourselves. Careers, Abu 405 channel, what do you call it?
Newsroom Africa.
Newsroom Africa, and other brands that are black owned.
So you're saying black companies need to somehow find some kind of a synergy of working together and doing business in a similar way as the Pakistanis, how they've created an economy in the townships, the Jews. So let's talk about that. Let me start with you, Arabile. What do you think is hindering that currently?
The fact that, guys,
because I don't think it's a new conversation.
No, it isn't. But we've all grown having been taught to pusha panda. Right? And it's
one man. One man.
Humble push. In fact, do it. Humble. In fact, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And then the worst part was that as a family, the family looks to you. And then it's just like,
black tax.
I'm alone in this.
Yeah.
And the concept of black tax, I know people will always say Ubuntu, you need to know, it's still family and whatever. And I'm just like, that family in itself, what is it doing to try and continue to aid the process? Are you continuing to just suck from me?
How do we sustain this?
Precisely. You're not actually helping us move forward. You're still saying to me, Arabile, 5K. Homie, what are you actually going to do with this 5K? Where's the repayment on this 5K? And in that repayment, I'm funny 5K. I'm funny repayment ya bank. I'm bank.
Yeah.
You paying them interest. Why the hell are you not paying
and
interest?
if you don't pay, again, guys, Arabile, I go cutting the 5,000. And then wavai. But how fika banking, and which I know that, and that's when I wanted to focus on really on the role of banks. But how fika banking? No. Yes. How fika banking? But Ngoks hawa kutisa 5,000. Harto kaya, and he will negotiate.
Yeah.
But Hanna seki it one blackmail. How tiaka no so na no grande. You understand? In fact, it's a blackmail, and I'm sorry, someone would say blackmail. It's more racist, but it's blackmail because it's what we use, whether in different cultures or not.
But guys, we know what the problems are. How do we change it? Because I think at the fundamental, this conversation is not a new one, as I said. How do we? What can we instill? I think also it's late for us to unlearn. It's also very difficult to unlearn at a later age. So how can we entrench new roots within the next generation, our kids' kids? How can we do better? What do we need to do?
It's the learning. Because if I know better, why am I not showing somebody else?
Okay.
And why is that person not showing somebody else? We've all hogged on to this knowledge that we've gotten. That you and I went to all different schools. But the knowledge we each gained, we kept to ourselves and said, I'm going to build a business. For who?
For me.
So we need to share.
Why aren't we?
Because what do we need to do? Sorry to cut you.
No. Look, Arabile is right. I think we are saying we always wanted the success to be my success, so that I feel like I or no. But now let's take it back to local economic activities and participation of different people. To say, what are your strengths? As Mpho, my strength is I can coordinate teams.
Can bring people together.
I can bring people together. You understand? But what are Nkoksi's skills? Nkoksi, he can manage teams, especially from Careers Magazine's perspective. But what is Trey Munyani and Arabile Gumede's role? You understand? Trey is a speaker. You understand? He can speak about these things, he can speak to the people. But what we need to start now influencing, and this is where I'm going back to say, let's study from early age now. To say, career development, and you see that's why we come to Careers TV, Career Guide Network, Careers Magazine, is to say, let's go back to basics. What do we teach? We know that the caliber of the leadership we need tomorrow to improve the economy is not yet now. It's not ready. So we start with these ones to say, our goal is that in 2050, we want to have South Africa that is non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, you understand, and full of opportunities for everyone. So who do we start teaching now? We start teaching this 5-year or 3-year-old.
Okay, I think there's so much to talk about. We can teach. This is such a broad conversation. But I want us to talk about our unemployment rate in South Africa currently. Funny enough, I saw this on your timeline. You were one of the first people to break this. And you were talking about it has, decreased, yeah. However, a very important silver lining there. Can you explain the silver lining?
Yeah, sure.
Most people didn't get that.
I didn't know that it
decreased.
So, and here's the thing. So the worst thing about it, and I want to start here, before I explain the process. Our problem is not knowing. And when we do know, we think too much of ourselves.
Okay.
Right. I didn't know how it worked out. And when I first saw the headline, I was just like, wait, what? And the first thing I did was not just tweet it. The first thing I actually did was call an economist I knew, right? I called a guy called Mielani Malulek and I said, listen, brother, how the heck can this be? And he explained it to me. Quick 5-minute conversation. Explained it to me. And then I said, oh, okay, now I get it. Let me help others and explain. So the first thing people take is the first bit of news and don't read on. I'm going to say something that is very controversial. My favorite artist is Proverb, and in one of his songs he says, blacks don't read, that's why I wrote my book to a tune. Because the truth is, we don't open books to read, we'd rather listen to music. So if I said my story to a song, you'd listen to me better. Right? So that's the essence of it. And if we change that, we need to change the fact that read, understand, educate yourself, listen. So with that unemployment number, how it actually works out is, we have a base, right? Let's just say the base is 5 people. That is your labor force. That is all the people that can work. If I offered you a job, or if you don't have a job in Cox, right? You are outside of this labor force. Why? Because you're also not looking for a job. So even if a job were to become available, you are not part of this labor force. So this labor force lost 5 million people. Right? So we lost 5 million people. In terms of the number of people in this labor force who can work, but lost their jobs, was 2.2 million people. So you were in the labor force. That's the pool we count from. The unemployment rate only counts from this pool. So if you are unable to work because of whatever it may be, whether you're disabled or no longer looking for work or whatever the case is, or retired even, you are outside of the labor force. It's not considered when counting the unemployment numbers. Exactly. Okay. So you lose your job. You were initially in the labor force. Okay? You lose your job. You lose your job. You are no longer in this labor force. Why? Because you can no longer look for work as well because of COVID-19. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? Interesting now. Because of COVID-19, you can't really move around and go look for a job. So then it doesn't really. So you can't be part. And for different reasons. Exactly. It's not because you actually don't want to look for work anymore, but because unfortunately, due to COVID-19, you're not going to be able to look for work. So you exit the labor force. So now I'm counting less people from a smaller pool. So hence the decrease in the unemployment rate. Gotcha.
So for Nafo Autiakasi, Grembendi, Ngaba Kalorwaka, because kita make feel out
but it's not an economic problem, it's a statistical problem. Statistics made it seem like this was a good news story in the smallest way. If you were to look at the expanded definition of unemployment, the expanded definition includes people who can no longer look for work.
A quick one, maybe to play devil's advocate. don't their optics perhaps help or aid looking at where we are as a country? It seems as if everything is quite pessimistic at this point because everything has been downhill since lockdown. So I think it presents a bit of optimism to say, because obviously, as you said, South Africans just read the headline but don't go beyond the headline. So most would probably be watching this and be understanding for the first time what that headline really meant. But in essence, the optics around it of saying that unemployment decreases. Someone looks at it face value and says, oh, at least things are picking up, and I'm a bit encouraged by that. Doesn't it help in a certain case?
Not at all. Why? Because things have actually been going down since 2009. Some of the best parts of this country were happening 2009, 2010. That World Cup might have been the crux of it all. Right? After that, we needed to face the reality that we needed to rebuild again. We had just been slapped by a global financial crisis, which we continue to praise ourselves for, that, oh no, we looked good in it because we had a surplus on everything. Trade surplus, which means that we were importing a lot, but we were exporting even more. So we were making a profit out of that. We had a current account surplus, meaning that people were investing more in South Africa than we were investing outside. So we were getting more money, right? We had a budget surplus, meaning that the money we had as a tax base, we weren't spending all of it. So we still had money left in the bank. So we had what we call a triple surplus back 2008, 2009, when the financial crisis hit, right? So the crisis hit, what do? We plowed money into the economy to try and smooth things over.
From the surplus?
Yes, which is great. It's fine that you had a surplus.
That's what the surplus is for, in
exactly.
any case.
Problem was, we didn't rebuild from that. We just kept on spending. And then what happens? Unfortunately, you have a leadership structure. And I'm not going to blame it on just one person, because this person did not do it on his own. You have a leadership structure that unfortunately collapses the country. And for 10 years, we've been going downhill. There needs to be a point where we realize how bad it is. And for us to continuously give ourselves that little shot in the arm to say, it's not so bad, doesn't move us forward. We're going to keep lying to ourselves.
Let's talk about, because that's a great segue, let's talk about the recovery to our economy. What is your viewpoint? What are the pillars that we need to look at in order to recover our economy? I'll get to you. I'm sure you have your own opinion on that. But what pillars of our economy do you think would add much more value? And also find beyond that, what role can I play on the ground as a layman in the recovery? Because I mean, all of us are looking at these news and we're looking at people like Arabile explaining to us how bad the situation is. But then far and beyond that, if I'm a solutions-based person, I then ask myself, but what can I do to ameliorate the situation? What role do you think can be done from a recovery perspective?
I think we need to get the economy going. And by getting the economy going, it means that business needs to start functioning. But which business are we talking about? Of course, outside this conversation, we discussed that to say, how do we get local people to start participating? We've got small business. You see, circulation of money is what builds economies. You understand? And people ignore the fact that it starts with smaller businesses, to be honest. And also to allow government, banks must also now open up. So that they need to think differently. And we are tired of bankers that have been there for they're almost ready for pension. So they are thinking, you understand? So if you go there to them and you say, I need to borrow money to buy equipment and so on and so on.
Or I'm a social media influencer. I need to buy a camera for my YouTube channel.
You're out. You're not gonna get
They're using old school methodology to try and solve future problems. Guys, half the jobs we have weren't around 10, 15 years ago.
That's true, even 5 years ago.
Right, so why are the banks still only lending in a structured fashion? Do you know how much your rate is on your credit card? Nobody does.
I don't.
Because nobody looks at that. Do you know how much it is on one of the extended loans you may have gotten from a bank? Nobody does. They're just like, oh, the bank approved. The only time you might care about your interest rate is when you're buying a car or a house. You need to start caring, one, as yourself, for that other part. The second part, banks need to start opening up their thinking. They cannot still be doing things the exact same way they used to. It makes no sense. The society has changed.
Where are they living? Where are these bankers? I'm sorry, I'm asking this question.
Because it still works for now.
Are they living in China?
No, but for now, they still feel like it works for them. And that's the sad reality, is that we've let it be because it's just like, hi, well, it's their rules. But actually, do their rules make sense in a South African context?
I got scared. The president was announcing that plus minus 14 billion out of the 200 billion that was announced was utilized.
Yeah.
Now, it just like, I was asking myself to say, but 14 billion?
Now, and also know that they had actually said, we're going to extend 100 billion.
For the first.
Yeah. And then if need be, we'll raise it to 200 billion. So of the 100 billion, it's only 14% that has been used. I just want to put it that way. If we go to the 200 billion, that's now 7% of it that's been used.
But what does it mean? And I'm coming in there to say, what does it mean? Does it mean that they don't trust the government to say that the guarantees they will be able to pay? Obviously, we know that government didn't give them the 200 billion. You understand?
Yeah, it's the Reserve Bank who sat and said, we'll support you if you need it.
If you need it, we'll borrow you or we'll take it. But it shows us something that it's very critical to say. Banks don't trust government. That's what it means. Because if government gives 94% guarantees on us to say, if you are impacted by the COVID, because all the businesses were impacted. I mean, if your business has stopped from the 1st of April until last month, the end of September, it's what, 4 months?
Of no activity.
Of no activity. But the bank, you've been banking so well with them over the period. And then when you get, they say, no, you're not bankable. Because what method are they applying? Because you used a COVID environment that is an emergency, and then you use the credit experts that are old-fashioned.
So the credit rating system then would apply to your
in
business
a normal process.
In a normal, even though you are in COVID, which you would expect them to understand.
Abnormal situation. But I have an issue even with the loan guarantee scheme as a whole.
Okay.
Right. And let me explain this. I don't have any money because of COVID-19. My business goes absolutely bankrupt. I ask the bank for money. They give me money and they say, okay, here are the conditions. We will decrease the interest rate, possibly by 200 basis points. So now you're paying an interest rate, maybe let's say, of prime, so 7%, right? And we can defer it for a year, which means you don't have to pay for a year, right? So from now until next year, same time, you don't have to pay this back. Okay. My problem is I still have to pay it back. Yet, I'm boosting your economy as a country. Why is it that in that 4, 5, 6 months, a situation that it isn't my fault, it isn't my doing, why do I have to suffer for it? Because I now have to pay, in the end, to help build this economy again.
The local economy.
You keep crying, small businesses are the way to go, but in the end, the same small business, you're not going to help in the end.
So if I'm following what you guys are saying is that the systems and the pillars that hold up the economy and also the political landscape at large are not patriotic enough to actually work us forward from a recovery perspective. So the systems are still regressive.
Rigid.
In a certain instance. So they don't modify these systems or adapt these systems to the times that suit the position we're in. So when we say, okay, we understand as banks, this is how you guys have been functioning, but then, government applies pressure from a policy perspective to say, listen, if you guys are not shaping out, you are out. But you need to adjust the way you do things.
There isn't a single bank that made a loss.
And that should tell you something.
They all lost 80%, 90%, yes, fine, in terms of their earnings and their profits. But no bank lost and made a loss. So clearly COVID, yes, was bad in terms of decreasing your profits, but you still made a damn profit. Are you not seeing the fact that there are people who can no longer work, possibly ever?
They're down and out.
But you're like, no, I'll give you a loan, and then later you must pay me back, and then you're the same person that must help this economy grow again back in future.
So in a nutshell, the policies that are in place and the leadership that is in place is not it's not supportive towards a small business.
So you want them to crack the whip?
We want them to be in the position of that are in a small business
On the ground.
to say we, for example,
So you guys, if I'm following what you guys are saying, you're saying that the current measures that ought to help from a recovery perspective of businesses favor the bigger businesses, but they don't necessarily favor the ones on the ground.
COVID favored banks, and it favored bigger businesses. So you had the message that young people start your own businesses. There's people that started businesses in January this year. They took their pensions, they took their little money they had, they invested. 3 months, COVID came. You know, now the bank requirements and the treasury requirement is that you must have been credit worthy by the end of February.
Yeah, you must have had some business activity that they could monitor for maybe a year or two.
And you had salaries. You had salaries.
Yeah.
From January, that when you started, you had salaries February. You understand? March.
And then April happened.
Yes. And April happened. Now, you need to prove track record. So they're saying the bank must use their discretion.
You don't even have 6 months worth of salary.
No. You don't have.
Yeah.
But what is the bank's discretion as we know it? Or the bank's financial institutions? Their discretion is always to avoid risk. That's what they do. That's why they don't even manage it. So we need to create a platform or an environment the same as Kenya to say, let's bring more banks, let's bring more competition a little bit. Let's shake up the current setup of the big four. You understand? Let's introduce the other small 500 banks.
Okay, guys, I'm totally out of time.
Arab money and the rest.
I'm saying
you just have to introduce everything that you can.
I think we can talk all day, but just in closing, I think this conversation was quite fruitful for me, and I'm hoping it was for you too. However, it just got me thinking as to how can we make information such as this much more accessible for people like me on the ground who don't necessarily understand economics at a higher level, or who would require a bit more understanding of economic issues, financial issues. How can we make information about that accessible, and not only accessible to the elite of this world, and not only to be perceived as, oh no, that's too serious of a conversation.
Yeah.
How can we bring finance conversations and economic conversations?
You're already doing it. This is it. I think simplicity, guys. We're trying to get simple, futuristic solutions to future problems. So why complicate it? Why bring us here in a suit when we can do this like this? And literally just have the conversation, help people understand it better. And I think the world is turning away from just realizing that you needed some sort of massive gravitas to have this sort of conversation. Nkoks, what I can learn from you, despite my knowledge, is huge. What I can learn from Mpho in this, huge. And what we can all learn from this conversation is huge. So I think platforms like this need to just continue to grow.
And from my side, I think, like Arabile said, town hall conversations.
Yeah.
Back to basics. We go to young people on the ground and older generation. We say, as community, how do we rebuild our economy in those particular communities? Then whether government comes or not, because anyway, who are these government servicing? The same communities. What are these banks, where are they making their money from? From the same community. So we need to start working together as people, as smaller communities, to reorganize and re-strategize around how best, but the simplest way that Nkoks, you guys are bringing to us, especially on Careers TV and Careers Mag, I think it's an easier way to communicate. So we need to encourage young people to tap into these platforms, Careers TV, Careers Mag, you understand, all those platforms that are available so that they're able to participate, in this kind of conversations that will add value to the next person. But also, Nkoks, take time, and we must take time, all of us. Where you've got an advantage, you can teach someone something, teach them. You understand? They don't have to pay for it. You understand? You're able to educate someone to say, you can do this, you can do that, tomorrow you can be president of South Africa. That's the conversation we want to entertain.
Arabile, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate your time for actually checking this out. This is Careers TV. Till we meet again, aware.
Visit our website at www.careerstv.co.za. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Careers TV, the future.